The World Junior Championships was one of the most fun tournaments to watch in a long time, with 4 different teams winning games against the US. But it was only the Canadian Open team who were able to do so twice, defeating the US on Universe in power pools, and then managing to win in the finals without giving up a single break. Today we're going to dive into how the Canadian O-line was so successful, and what the US could have done strategically to give themselves a better chance in this game. Canada don't go forwards from their first full play, but the US dump defenders never get a look in on these 2 chiseling resets. James Foord-Kelcey runs a decoy breakside continuation cut after the second of these resets, but turns to go deep instead, gaining buckets of separation. Ben Holland must help here, but his fronting defense on the back of sack cutter doesn't allow him to see the disc or anyone else on the field, so Foord catches under no pressure at all. Canada complete their pool play here. They're slightly interrupted as the Canadian offense here are expecting a flick force, but get a backhand force, so there's more pressure on this far side cutting space than expected. Samuel Z does the right thing and swings. Callahan McCullagh fakes their continuation and bends his cut to the open side, gaining a power position he uses to hit a precise same third huck. This time the US fronting on the cutters doesn't allow Reggie Maskett to get involved to help. Canada's central handler fakes the pool play break, but the open side poach here allows Canada to gain yards. The poach here doesn't do much when the handler is really only looking to throw to the break side anyway, and any deep shots have been occurring later in the possession. A few passes later, I like how Jack Ponton reacts abnormally to this fake. Traditionally, a faked off handler here should attack up the line, but given Ponton is the second handler to be engaged, that means the stall is rising, and if he attacked into a space his defender already has well covered, he likely wouldn't get free and would simply block the throwing lane to the under. Instead, McCullagh can hit the dump with the same separation once he gets closer, and Ponton completes the give-go to get off the sideline. Canada fire deep here again. Joseph Lodall just about sees the huck go up, comes in late but gets the block on the floaty throw.
Jostling in the end zone, and the USA smash that into the stands.
On the replay, you can see Daniel Hobday pushing Foord-Kelcey away from the catch point, which gives the space for the help defender to make the play. The US huck it back the other way to little separation this time.
Back the other way, pressure from Canada.
On the replay, it's hard to find the non-minor contact caused by the Canadian defender. Certainly his running line is totally fine and he doesn't trip Tanner Monahan. The only possible place where some illegal contact may have occurred is Ponton's left arm. I think correctly, Monahan retracts the call. The US is poaching in this forced middle here. In the face of it looks a bit silly. It's giving Canada easy swings to amble up the field, but at least it means Canada aren't really hitting big unders or deeps, and you'd hope this would tire out the O-line and pay dividends later in the game. But after a contested strip, the US defenders seem to lock more into their one-to-one matchups and stop poaching the lane. After the check-in, Monahan closes his deep buffer and Ponton takes the advantage by striking deep, catching the huck from McCullagh with time and space.
Celebrating already.
At the check, Monahan's got a great position to put pressure on a breakside under, will be able to catch up in a race to the open side, has deep position and has vision of the disc, and he gives up so much of that just to stand a little tighter to Ponton, perhaps thinking as their main handler he'll inevitably try to get the disc in his hands. Here there is less poaching of the handlers. Specifically, Sawyer Thacker seems to have been given specific instructions to mark Ponton tightly and to never poach. And off the bat that almost converts into a layout D, but this tight marking comes back to bite the US later in this point. Ponton attacks the breakside under space, under heavy pressure, and uses that overcommitment to create some deep separation.
In the end zone is Pointing, he's going to have to read it perfectly, and he does so. What a grab that is from Pointing.
Canada are flowing nicely here from a dominator start before throwing over the head of Foord-Kelcey.
For these big gain of yard passes, and that one's too high.
Once Bonnell has the disc on the sideline, McCullagh's mark makes life really difficult for him. Bonnell looks off the open side under, chooses not to throw to the scooping up line, and then doesn't put enough touch on this inside flick to the middle of the field. Equally, Calvin Nishim-Luta could make Bonnell's life easier here. After getting looked off, he turns and clears out, but crucially loses vision and disengages completely with the thrower for 3 or 4 steps. It's so important for Nishim-Luta to stay connected here, because he's the best placed attacker to attack the backfield space evacuated by Lodall. The ensuing Canadian offense is so resilient. They spend 30 to 45 seconds going nowhere before hitting a nice under to Foord-Kelcey, who takes a bit of a risk to deliver this nice inside throw before Chase Alexander's low lefty backhand seals the deal.
Alexander. Oh, that is lovely from Alexander.
After a nice early flow, Ponton does so well to be patient finding an under before accelerating out and giving it going.
Defense going to have to break a force here. No, it doesn't. Just passes to the open side.
McCullagh easily breaks the mark to get the disc to the very free Foord-Kelcey.
You can't leave that much space for James Foord-Kelcey. McCullagh finds it.
Out of half, the US opt for this 3-3-1 arrowhead zone. It stifles progression for a few passes, but look how well Canada's O-line take advantage. When the tips widen too much, leaving the central space, Breton hits, Gauthier returns, and Z helps him advance to the midfield, where the US crumble.
Quickly moves it through, and the zone is scurrying to catch up.
Foord-Kelcey gets to Monahan's blindside and creates flow that leads them to the red zone. USA are doing a good job of blocking cuts to the end zone, but when McCullagh locks in on the open side dump, he's able to throw the inside and take advantage of the face marking. This is the first time the USD really looks like it gets the upper hand. The US particularly do well to shut down open unders and aren't overcommitting on breakside unders so they can contain the deep space.
Considering the amount of traffic that's gone through McCullagh and Breton and Pointing, it's a high stall count. It's been signalled as a stall out.
The stall out call is accepted, but Canada play great defense on the end zone line. McCullagh plays excellent defense on the front of sack ISO. He's positioned slightly more behind the attacker than you might see out of some of the US defense, and that helps him to keep his eyes on the disc until McCullagh commits to one direction. Second in the stack beats Averill, but Ponton closes in from behind, and Breton closes in from an inactive handler, and that gives the attacker more to think about as he lays out for the disc. Canada fast break and get some good early movement, but run out of momentum and have to punt it deep, a shot that Averill wouldn't get to even if he kept going here. This around backhand is right into the path of McCullagh, but he can't swat it away, and then in the panic, McCullagh throws a really difficult throw and doesn't get the right touch at all. After the Canadian timeout, Foord-Kelcey is free so early on this slash, like he envisioned to end up on the breakside space, that he can turn and attack the open side, seeing there's no lane poach in this position. He further takes advantage of the aggressive face marking by dishing it off to the forward-facing handler. Have a look at how Gauthier gets free here. He's already occupying the space he wants to get free in, he has better eyes on the disc, and when his defender sees him fake this deep cut, he bites and it lets Gauthier make an easy turn and catch. The more traditional approach here would be to see the disc coming your way and clear deep hard to allow one of the deeper cutters to attack into the space, but this way there's no closing in defender on your back shoulder or sprinting low margin of error catch you need to make. Grady Alexander sends up the soaring huck and McCullagh has to surrender the inside position, but his height advantage on McCullagh, who mucks up on him to deny his handling abilities, comes back to bite the US, and that's a huge break opportunity they miss in this game.
That was Darren Wu-esque. Great read from McCullagh. Gave up the inside channel to loop around the back.
After the near miss on this layout catch, Canada get into the standard meta endzone set with two handlers, an alpha and a beta cutter, and then three inactive cutters chilling in the back. I like how fluidly they play in this structure though, working to change the angle of attack whenever they face resistance. Valerio Yanni made a great Instagram post talking about how Canada played this four-person dominator by not clearing out traditionally and instead working on relocating with their eyes up and hips facing the disc. You can check out that post in the description below. The US here are so locked in on their matchups that they're struggling to ever check in with the disc, and Canada exploit this with these last two passes to finish the possession.
He adjusts well, pushes it forward into Foord-Kelcey, exactly what Liam was talking about before. USA face guarding, Canada exploiting it.
After the easy initial movement again here from Canada, I feel the deeper defenders are putting themselves in such bad spots with their positioning.
Plenty of space in the end zone. Oh, it's so easy.
Had they seen the disc more, they would know that the deep shot is a big threat with a thrower in power position and cutters offset to the break side. Gauthier crosses up Logan, and Holland is standing facing the deep space, so has no shot of providing help, giving Canada a quick score. Ponton and McCullagh aren't the only Canadian handlers who are comfortable dishing this lefty over the top to counter the US's face marking. Ariel and Breton throw similar righty throws here as the Canadians get so much joy in the handler space at the start of this possession. Ariel, I think, gets fairly called on this travel. You'd ideally like to see him avoid continuing to accelerate after the catch has already been made and striding normally instead of chopping his feet so he can take those 2 additional steps after he has caught the disc without the need to decelerate. The US are in forced middle here, and though they're getting roasted on these open side resets, it allows them to find this buzz switch. But they have another opportunity to roll onto the next upline, but don't take it as Ariel gets the disc just outside the end zone. The US crumble to backhand, and one more open side face marked dump and swing is all it takes for Canada to finish off the possession.
McCullagh's on that far sideline, available and takes the option now. USA defense holding firm at the moment to the back corner, and there it is. Canada within 1 of the gold.
The start of Canada's final possession is actually a little messy. I'm guessing McCullagh here makes a cut that's not in the plan and that goes straight deep instead of going up the line to the open side. On this possession, he's drawn the defensive matchup of Steph McCullagh, who's the US's best player. So perhaps McCullagh wants to try to go deep to take advantage of his height matchup, but I suspect his main goal is to get out of the way and avoid Ponton throwing that open side upline to him and having McCullagh get a block on that pass. The problem with this deep cut is it creates a crossover with Gauthier, who I think is supposed to cut into this space. Thankfully, Foord-Kelcey comes into this space to save the day, and really this point is a Foord-Kelcey masterclass, giving and getting from Chandonnet, then earning the inside lane to give Breton a release valve before looking off some sketchy options before finding Ariel on a bigger round and swing, getting the return pass. He hits Jace Alexander under, who dishes to Ariel, taking advantage of Erdmann's face mark. Foord-Kelcey gets a step to the open side of his mark, way in the inactive space, but when he doesn't close down the separation when Foord-Kelcey steps off the gas for just a moment, that's all but game as Foord-Kelcey cruises to the front cone to complete the victory for Canada.
Huge relief for all the fans. They came in with 3 opportunities to take the gold, and in the open division they've finally done it, defeating the USA 15-12. Liam, what scenes down here?
Canada are back.
Let's talk takeaways. I didn't watch this game live, and I think going into the game, hearing what people were saying about the US's performance online, I expected a coaching disaster class from the US, the classic running into the same brick wall over and over again that would characterize the GB versus New Zealand U24 game I analysed in a previous video, or Felix's Canada versus Belgium U24 video. But I can see the tricky predicament that the American coaches got into. Early in the game, it's clear the US were getting exposed deep, and you can see much more lane poaching out of the American dump defenders to counter that. But then Canada used those open side poaches brilliantly to attack the break side or gain yards, or to give the handlers license to look longer for unders with the knowledge that there would always be a free reset. For me, the game is more characterized by the incredible offensive play from Canada. 4 O-line turns at the U20 level against the US is incredible, and when they did turn, they put the US D-line under pressure. But that's not to say the US coaches couldn't have set their team up for a better chance of success. I think a glaring issue is the lack of help in the cutting space onto deep cuts. The problem is the US defenders' positioning. Trying to front either the deepest or 2 deepest players in the stack is tactically naive. It's very possible to apply plenty of pressure to unders without positioning under and facing the deep space, losing so much information about where the disc is and when your teammates are. And then when there's a deeper defender there, they don't have the right body positioning to do anything about it. Especially in the first half, Canada also got a lot of joy from cutting to the break side under space, letting their defenders overcommit and then going deep. The other major problem for the US's defense is its inability to create pressure in the dump space, particularly when the dump is on the open side. It felt at times that the US defenders weren't really dictating what they wanted the dump to do. They were face marking, which was providing a lot of pressure onto all options, but pressure with face marking is often so broad that it never really stops Canada from doing what they want to do, and that means Canada can get exactly what they want. When you're face marking a player and lose so much information about where the disc is and where your teammates is, you're going to fall for every little fake move they do. A great example is this Gauthier cut where he fakes deep when there's no real deep threat, and it gives him an easy continuation to the break side.
Face marking only becomes a mistake when the offense knows how to punish it, by timing these small fakes and by leading the receivers into space with throws that the face marking defenders can't see. These skills are worth training because plenty of teams will happily face mark you all game exactly the way the US did here.
Hey, what's up everyone? This is Sai.
Simon Ramirez-Ortiz from Furious George and the Colombian World Games team breaks all of this down in a training video he made for us, and he gives you a 2v2 game that you can play at training, which will build your team's confidence against face-marking defenders and is genuinely good fun. It's in the Hive training library now for YouTube members and for patrons. The link's in the description, and if you're not a member yet, then that's the same link. Now back to Noah with the analysis.
Fundamentally, the US coaches need to ask their defenders to get their heads up more, to gather more information about the situation they're in, both to work together and help in situations where they're beat 1-to-1, and also to get a better understanding of where the most valuable space is given the disc and the position of the other players on the field. The other glaring issue is the US D-line's decision-making when they got the turn. Particularly in the third quarter of this game when the Canadian O-line were looking a bit tired, it's such a let-off to give the disc back so easily on difficult hucking opportunities when there was a steady stream of free players all around the field. On the flip side, I think the Canadian players and coaches made some great tactical decisions. The veteran savvy from McCullagh to lead McCall into the inactive space and to not get too involved whilst being marked by the US's best player was impressive. The decision to play a star player like Lucas Ariel on the D-line the whole week was bold and brave, and then to pull him over to the O-line when they start giving the disc up in the third quarter and when the mission of the game is more about not getting broken, trading the game out 2.5 points in front shows great tactical nous. I really loved how a lot of the Canadian players were able to create separation from static instead of trying to make big, huge fake cuts. It reminds me of the Ian French adage to make the smallest effective fake possible when handling were applied to the cutting space. There was more great tactical awareness from McCullagh and Ponton to switch from handling to cutting when they were marked by shorter handler defenders and then were able to beat them dominantly in the deep space. All of this to say, it wasn't a fluke. It was a very well-deserved win from Canada, and there's so much you can learn from watching these young Canadian players on offense. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time.
To the end zone. Canada are the world champions in the open division. Foord-Kelcey with another goal.
And you can see Reid Kloss talked about those open side resets and caught face guarding a little bit of times. USA trying to shut down everything, end up allowing that floaty inside pass to lead them into the end zone. They've been caught like that a couple of times, and Canada doing the right thing. When you're being face guarded like that in the reset, just put it out to space. Very hard for the USA defender to react and maybe trying to take away too much and end up giving up the end zone on that opportunity, but looks so confident in around the handler space.